Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 7 says, "The rich ruleth the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Hi, my name is Charles Vance. I'm along with Chief Strategist Terry Sacka, and we're going to be here for the next 30 minutes on the wealth transfer.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. And today we want to start off, we're trying to give it so we can give information a little direct so you know exactly what's coming. Today we are going to discuss what we call the shadow banking system and what that really means in the financial system of the world and why that's important to you.
That sounds mysterious to me. Sounds almost like a dark movie.
Well, you know what? In the sense that it's dark, it is systems of the world. And so for us of believers, we try to base decisions on truth. But if our truth is underneath and we can't see it because it's shadow or dark, are we really getting statistics and information that we believe is to be true?
I've personally, except for talking with you, I've never heard of this shadow banking system. Probably the majority of the folks that are listening today don't know what it means. So explain first of all what that means.
Shadow banking, in a definition of it, let me do this. Let me give this out as a definition, and I will go back to it. I actually have here a IMF working paper. Now, this is from the International Monetary Fund, which is our global organization like the United Nations in finance. And this is their own working paper about what shadow banking is, what it's doing, and this is a very deep report, but I'm just going to kind of scratch the surface. But here's the actual definition of shadow banking. The shadow banking system is a non-banking institution that includes hedge funds, money market funds, pension funds, and now that, ladies and gentlemen, is what a lot of you have to be concerned about. Your pension funds, the money that you have for your retirement is stored inside the shadow banking system. Insurance companies, so for those that have annuities and things like that, your money is being played with inside this system. And to some extent, large custodians like the Bank of New York, State Street and such, which are brokerage firms, they do this. Now, what that is, the funding is typically associated with non-banks, which means security lending transactions, and the use of collateral they post with the banks. Now, here's what this is wrapping up to. This is a non-bank bank. It's difficult to track. And here's the thing. The funds and the money of shadow banking go on the accounting books and off the accounting books. And so what they're reporting on the commercial bank level isn't really accurate because all the major institutions and commercial banks deal in shadow banking underneath. They set up finance companies. And so these guys have the bank, which is regulated by the government and has to follow certain rules, but underneath they have individual finance companies that go along with these others, and then they do financial transactions, but those are not accounted on the balance sheet because they can move them around.
Now, Terry, I got to interrupt you. I got to ask you, so you're telling me that the banks actually control what is going on in these monetary funds that would have to do with our retirements, that has to do with annuities, has to do with your insurances, and so you're saying the bank actually controls, but they're not in the books of the banks?
They're in and out of the books of the banks.
Explain that to us.
So if a bank says we are solvent, because remember, a bank brings in $1 on deposit, lends out $27 at the peak. So when you think you have money in the bank and the bank is solvent, meaning they're in good standing and they'll survive any type of trauma, you might be surprised that underneath the system, there's a shadow system where this bank is in far greater debt than you can ever imagine.
Well, it's obvious, and what you just mentioned is called fractional banking, which the majority of folks in America have never heard that or don't know what it is. But it is when the bank has this on deposit, and then they can, on paper, make 27 more of these.
Yeah.
They don't exist. They're just lending paper money, and not even in the sense of having a bill, because this doesn't exist.
Right.
They're lending it on paper. It's like IOUs.
Yes.
So the bank is 27, if they have $1,000 on deposit, they can loan $27,000. That's crazy.
Well,
You can't do that.
No, but the part that makes it even crazier is why we experienced the collapse in the 2008 and the housing market was because of that fractional banking and because of this shadow banking that exists. So when they had, I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars outstanding in this shadow system, that it absolutely collapsed. And we're going to show some data to back that up, so you don't have to just kind of go from what we're saying. But that is very important to understand, because what you think is stable really is more thin ice and potentially dangerous. 2008 is what we contend the beginning of what's coming. It's extremely dangerous financially. You're being taught information of the systems of the world, which we know who runs the systems of the world. That's Satan. Instead of relying on the wisdom of the Spirit, be cautious, because the information we're given is not giving you all the truth. And remember, the truth shall set you free. And that's what we're trying to here to do.
So Terry, let me ask you this. I want to back up a few years. The savings and loan system that collapsed, what was it, back in the 80s?
Yes.
It collapsed simply because of this fractional banking. They actually loaned out more, and it wasn't the idea that they loaned it out, because if I loaned it out to you and you thought you still had to repay me, I mean, I'm going to be setting fine for a while because I'm loaning something I don't have. But if you refuse to pay me, and I'm operating my bank on the idea that you're going to pay me and he's going to pay me and he's going to pay me, then I would be setting fine. But if some of those loans begin to collapse and I'm operating my bank with the idea that you're going to be paying me money back for something I'm loaning you on paper, I could be operating fine for years.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I used to look at banks, how these guys build these multi-million-dollar buildings, and they give me, back in the old days, give me 3% on a loan and charge me 7%. How could they possibly stay in business? And then I discovered later in life that they were using fractional banking. They were actually loaning a whole lot more money than they actually had on deposit.
And what's dangerous about that is, in the day, our banks used to be regional. So they were mom and pop in the sense where your bank serviced your region, your city, your town. Well, unfortunately, they passed the laws where insurance companies, brokerage firms, and banks all can kind of own and be collective, which has pretty much destroyed the system. That's why, by the way, the real estate collapsed, because they were wrapping up real estate mortgages, selling them on Wall Street, when in the day that never would have been allowed. But when the banks were regional, it was okay, because they knew who they were lending money to. And they figured there was a percentage of default possibility within the community, but you wouldn't have a total collapse, because unless the complete society went into a depression, they were going to always survive. Now, banking is not only commercial, they are invested in things called derivatives and bond derivatives, and in the shadow banking system, in derivatives and bond derivatives that are absolutely worthless, and I'm telling you, hundreds of trillions of dollars of fake paper investments, buying paper investments, creating bonds that buy bonds that buy bonds, and it's all backed up by nothing.
Hey, can we get into that business? It sounds like you could make a lot of money.
Well, you know, they are.
But it's against the law for the average person to do something like that.
Well, you would have to pay a lot of money to start the bank.
No, I mean, you could do it with a bank.
Yes.
But for me and you to do something like that in everyday life, just dealing with people, would be against the law.
Couldn't do it.
But the legal system, because they are so tied into the banking system,
Yes.
and survive off of that fake money,
Yes.
They've made this legal for the big institutions to do.
Yes, and not only is it legal, that's part of what they're saying promotes the economic engine. Because now everyone's more flexible, so they can lend money out, do this, do that. But that's also why we are absolute trillions in debt, why the retirement systems, pension systems, annuities that people have are fragile. We have to be very cautious. So it is, the reason we're bringing this up and want you to understand is your retirement account, what you've worked your whole life to save for, is tied into these systems. Now, I'm saying merely it is vital that you are properly diversified away from a system of deception and spider webbing of bending rules and recreating rules to suit the elite when we, the people, are the sheep. And that's dangerous. So what I'm saying is get information, be properly diversified. That's why we like hard assets. For those that do want information on how to protect and preserve their retirement accounts, you can easily set up IRAs, roll your existing IRAs and 401ks over to hard asset IRAs that's out of that system per se. It's still in your IRA, but you're investing in hard assets over time, not in the paper system. Just register on this website. We'll go ahead and send a free package to you. It's merely a service that we want to provide so you can be better educated to make these decisions.
Now, hard assets, what are you talking about when you're talking about hard
silver,
assets?
gold, things of that nature.
That's tangible.
Something that's tangible.
Something that you can't say, well, you give me one of these, I'll make it into 27.
Right, and it's very important for people to know too, just on a side note, when it comes to the silver and gold market, without showing it in detail, we'll get into it later, but I wanted to say it now so it can get out there. The prices have been collapsing just a bit, and it was all by design. It was magnificent in design. It was absolute manipulation by the commercial system, and soon as that price collapsed below thresholds that no one ever thought they were going to go, China and India came into the vault system of this country and bought the physical premiums of silver skyrocketed at 1.40% above the spot price. So all I'm really saying is, while you see in the world system...
No, hold on just a second. You're saying when the price hit the bottom on this, that India and China came in and began to buy the physical gold, not just on paper.
They bought, no, they didn't care about the paper.
And they were paying a 40%?
No, they weren't.
Who was paying the 40%?
Anybody who wanted to buy it on the secondary market.
Oh, so anybody here that wanted to buy it,
yes,
as an individual, was paying an extra 40% above spot value, means the actual value of it.
They actually even shut down American Eagle, silver American Eagles, for a bit because they ran out. Refineries ran out of material.
But to listen to the news and the banking system, it's not of any value.
It's not of any value. But if it's not of any value, then why are they actually buying the physical? They crashed and manipulated the price down because they wanted psychologically people out of a hard asset into the paper world, and they were themselves taking all that physical and stashing it in private vaults around the world. So don't be fooled for that. I mean, it's real.
If it's a paper system, they can manipulate us and control us.
Yes.
If we have something tangible, they can't control that.
That's the purpose of what we're trying to say here. You cannot be controlled or manipulated if we, the people, the Christian kingdom, have some form of tangible assets. Not just silver, but land, farmland. You know, it's a fight everywhere. We all know this. Even farmers tell me it's a fight just to stay alive because of the conglomerates trying to take over. But we, the people of the United States, and we, the Christians of the United States, if we have hard, tangible assets and not in the paper system, we can't be manipulated or controlled. And this is why I'm saying be cautious on putting your life's retirement savings all in the systems of the world and not paying attention to the wisdom that God has given us through the Bible.
I'm with one of the major insurance companies. We have our church facility, our TV facility, my cars, my home, our rental properties, almost all of them with two major insurance corporations.
Right.
One of them has started a bank in the last 4 years.
I don't like that.
They are, now, what are they doing with that? Is that part of the shadow banking
yes.
thing?
And what they're going to do is then the bank has to go by certain rules. So in shadow banking, they have to, or in the banking system, they have to adhere to regulations and rules. And the news and the media and the government says, oh, we're regulating them, we're controlling them. Yes, they're controlling the banking system to an extent. But underneath the banking system, in the shadow banking world, the finance companies and the hedge funds, pension funds, insurance annuity companies, they're under a completely different standard. So they can buy and sell off-book, on-book accounting methods that you have no idea what someone's really worth as far as a bank or a company. And that's why we had, if you remember, in 2008, so many institutions go bankrupt. Remember? The companies that went bust, Washington Mutual, gone. Merrill Lynch, Consolidated. Banks, Bear Stearns, gone. Lehman Brothers, gone.
Is that
Assimilation.
because they were operating under these banking, in this shadow banking?
Honestly, I think because they were the ones that were chosen.
Oh, so they were just kind of like examples.
Yeah, even though they're 150 years, they had to make examples and consolidate, and the big boys got together, my guess, and you're going, because they did extend not just shadow, but fractional banking. They were far more extended in derivative debt than they should have been.
Okay.
And when the system collapsed, they didn't have the liquid cash to back up the amount of debt that they had.
So the banks are taking the paper and investing it in this shadow banking in things that's not regulated by the banking system.
Yes.
So could that be what the insurance company that I'm dealing with is that they've got the bank, it's regulated, but the insurance company doesn't have the same regulations as the bank has?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And so what happens is you don't know where your money is. You don't know that it's actually safe. And I imagine people at some of these other banks thought their money was safe. And yes, granted, the government backed it up. They have this insurance corporation. But if you realize the FDIC insurance corporation is actually broke. The government itself, obviously, we're $17 trillion in debt. We keep accumulating $1 trillion more debt each year. We're broke as a nation, per se. And so there's a lot going on that we just have to be protected going forward. And it's not just about the individual. We're here to talk about the wealth transfer that's going to come, but those that understand. And in the kingdom, if we're here to have influence to make sure that morality stays within our children, our families are still protected by the intrusiveness of others that don't believe in God, then we better have some asset to back that up in order to provide.
We opened with this scripture, the rich ruleth the poor.
It's important.
The business world, I know you've heard this, it's called the gold rule.
Right.
He who has the gold rules. And it's biblical.
Yes.
The rich rules the poor. Now, here's what people have missed is we have been instructed by God to be in charge of everything. God told us when he made mankind, Genesis 1, 26, 27, he said, take dominion over everything I've created. Psalm chapter 8, he said that he put under the feet of man, everything that he had created. So he gave us a responsibility to dominate. You're not going to dominate in this earth if you don't have finances, because it's a biblical law that has been established that the rich rules the poor. So we've got to get our finances in shape.
Absolutely. And we have to do it not just by relying on the systems of the world and the paper world. And people argue this all the time. And I'm like, listen, just as salvation, we're all going to stand for judgment. You're going to be held accountable for not being properly diversified. So it's really
Jesus
important.
told the story. Matthew 25, parable of the talents. Man, read it. You
Read
talk about something that'll shake you.
I'm telling you, and proper diversification is a hard asset, and that's why we really believe in helping people understand the most liquid of hard assets, which is silver and gold. Yes, the prices go up and down. It doesn't matter. It's the last asset you sell. It's the one you pass down to your children, your children's children. And don't think for a minute that the prices are going to stay down. Eventually, not only are they going up, they're going to skyrocket. They have to because of the trillions we're printing. Now, I'm going to show some images here on shadow banking so you can see kind of the core structure of what shadow banking is. And when we do this, we'll sit on the image for a little bit more than normal so you can really soak up the image. But you need to see why this is the case. This is how the shadow banking system and what they invest in and why it's so dangerous. So we'll go to image 1. Now, image 1 is you see those bars. Now, what those bars are, the black bars are, these are mortgage-backed securities. Now, the blue bars, for instance, are collateralized mortgage-backed securities. The yellow bars are collateralized debt obligations. Now, what does all that stuff really mean? All those investments, and if you notice, they're trillions of dollars. And if you notice, this is the part I want you to know. Now, number one, all those investments are all paper investments. Collateralized debt obligation, meaning they'll take a real estate mortgage loan, put it in Wall Street, get collateral for it, and then invest it and trade it. and we wonder why the housing market collapsed. All of this money, shadow, is all paper money created using collateral with your investments. Now, here's what to pay attention to. You notice it's trillions of dollars. You see how it went from the year 2000 up to 2006. It went from 500 billion up to 2 trillion. Well, if you remember what happened in 2006, the real estate market collapsed. So we could take that image off, and then you see how, of course, the shadow banking money collapsed. But in 2006, remember, we collapsed. Then 2007, 2008, the whole market system collapsed. That's because those $2 trillion in the shadow system of all these collateralized obligation notes, these paper notes, got overdone. It's basically like a balloon. It's all fake, doing fake, doing fake. And what happened is it imploded because you can only lie and fake so long before you get caught. And in 2006, 7, and 8, I don't have to tell you what happened, right? That's $2 trillion of impact to the system. That's just an extraordinary amount of money.
All of that was because it's not just the banking system doing the fractional banking.
Insurances,
where they loan
pension funds, your retirement accounts, your annuities.
And you're saying that all of those things that you just mentioned in that shadow banking is not regulated like banking is.
Yes.
And it almost is like how little more, how much less could it be regulated?
And that's what's scary. Now, this is globally. So your retirement is tied into those type of investments. Are you really that confident and secure that in the future, 5, 10 years, it'll be there? I'm telling you, 2008 was just the beginning. They're making it look like things are getting better. I'm here to tell you, be careful. It's not getting better. Nothing has been fixed. Matter of fact, we are in more debt and worse off. We're $6 trillion deeper in debt now than we were in 2008 as a nation. So now let's go to do this one. Now those alone are just the types of investments shadow banking does. $2 trillion. Don't underestimate $2 trillion, please. It is an enormous amount of money.
Terry, somebody might ask this question. Why would people do that?
Because they're making money off it.
So the people that are doing that are multiplying this money on paper are actually, they're the ones making money on this.
Absolutely, that's right.
And they honestly don't care. The majority of these people could care less about your investment.
Oh, no. They're making a lot of money doing it. Yeah. Matter of fact, though, when the silver and gold price collapsed here recently, they made billions of dollars because it was fake. They were selling gold and silver on paper they didn't own.
Oh, so they physically weren't.
Oh, no, they didn't own it. They sold at one point, one institution sold 400 tons of gold on paper. They didn't own the gold.
How do they do that?
They're allowed to do it. I won't even get into the details of it.
Is it part of the banking system?
No, it's just the market system itself. But no, they sell it on paper. They didn't own it, but they did that to crash the price. But physically, the gold and silver were leaving the vaults, going to China and India, into the pockets and vaults of the big people, the elitists. So don't think for a second these prices will stay down. They're not going to. Here's the structure of the shadow banking. I want to show you. Image 2 is this actual breakdown of what shadow banking means. Now, look at that dollar bill, and this is kind of, you're going to get into what the image of that actually represents. And just kind of pay attention to it for a minute. And no, on the left side there, when you see the left side, that's actually the repos, which are just kind of real estate type of things. Look at 30% of repurchase agreements on that. Then you see money market mutual funds. How many of you have money market mutual funds, right? Do you think your money's just sitting in cash? No, they're using it. There's 27% of the money market mutual fund goes into the shadow banking system.
Now, is this out of the banking system down
some
into
of this,
the shadow
yes.
banking?
Some of it is from the banking system, then they reroute it and do that. And then you notice non-agency mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt obligations. That's a breakdown of the types of investments they do inside the shadow system. And I'm really contending we have to be very cautious because that system broken down that way is all paper in paper in paper, except for the money market mutual funds. Money market mutual funds are supposed to be cash, but what they do is they take the cash and then put it into other things that are paper. So we could take that image off, but that is the component of the shadow banking index that gives you the breakdown. So you can understand they're taking real paper cash that's created, and then they're buying bonds on top of bonds on top of bonds, and it's collapsing. Countries like Portugal, Europe, Spain, Greece, they're really having some difficult times right now.
But again, that's fractional. It's fractional dealing.
It's all fractional dealing.
Because
that's right.
They're taking this and buying paper with it, which allows them to expand the use of
That's
more
exactly
than what
right.
this actually is.
That's exactly what it's about, to expand the use of money so money can move around, because if money doesn't move around, we don't have an economy. So look at this image 3. This is a debt versus liability thing on the financial institution's debt versus the federal liabilities. Now, look at that when it was in the Great Recession, they call it, in June of 2009 in the middle. We were at 132% debt to GDP. And they say that it actually shrunk 15%. We've actually paid off some of our bills, per se.
GDP, explain that.
Gross domestic product. It's what we produce as a nation.
As a nation, okay.
But I'm here to contend and tell you that the private is the blue, the red is the public Federal Reserve debt, but they're showing you 107%. Now, that's actually the debt versus the liability of it. And you could take that off, but we basically as a nation are broke in the sense that 107% means we spend way more than we bring in. But here's the thing, that's not telling you shadow financial statistics. So what you see in that 107% debt to GDP, meaning how much debt we have, they're not telling you all the debt that's underneath the books, that are off the books, on the books. We're in far deeper debt, more than Greece it was at the time before they collapsed.
What's the problem in spending more money than what you make?
Sooner or later, it has to come due. You're not going to be able to even pay the payment on the credit card, right?
Right.
Where we pay interest on our bonds. So I'm really saying if you have retirement accounts to protect folks, and you want to get IRAs protected because for the long term, you want to be careful being in all paper, go into hard tangible assets. It's a very simple transaction. We'll send you a free package. Just register online or give us a call, and we'll just give you some information so you can make this educated decision on how to do it. But make sure you have a good portion diversified. It's very dangerous if you don't, because when this system happens overnight, like in 2008, it'll be too late. Now, I want to read some statistics real quick before we wrap up. If you don't believe shadow banking is a big impact or importance, listen to these statistics right now about what's going on in our economy. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, more than 146 million Americans are poor or on low income. According to the Bureau, 49% of all Americans live in homes that receive direct money benefits from the federal government. Back in 1983, less than a third of Americans did that. Back in 1965, only 1 out of every 50 Americans were on Medicaid, and it's going on. And overall, the Social Security system, $134 trillion in debt. Folks, if we collapse one more time, your benefits and your retirement accounts in jeopardy. Please be protected. Next week, we're going to talk about the central bank of the central banks. And if you haven't made Jesus Christ the center of your life, ask him in your heart. He will come, and he will be there for you.
Tell somebody about the program here, Wealth Transfer. We'll see you next week, same place and same time. Have a great week. See you then.